The next item is item 46, it is an ordinance.
Discussion, Councilmember Stardig.
Thank you, Mayor. I attacked this last time, and I had a question about the affidavit and the impact on the process. And I was assured in the format that was given that the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 37, makes it a crime to knowingly lie on a government record. I still think it's, and I don't know because I haven't seen the form. I dealt with in banking for many years, W-9s, people providing their tax ID number that under penalties of perjury, there's still that language on the form, even though it doesn't require an affidavit. Is there language on the form, or do we know advising those that are signing it? I don't want to hear that they didn't know about that law after they've signed something that it's criminal.
Councilmember, let's hold this item to the end of the agenda and see if we get an answer to it.
I appreciate it. I just think it's the right thing to do. It's not that it's a big issue. I think everyone should, if they're signing their names to something, that it should be accurate and forthcoming. But you just,
In an abundance of caution to
Yes.
put in front of them that they can't perjure themselves.
I don't want any excuses. Thank you.
If we could move to item 47, Ms. Russell.
Okay. Item 47 is an ordinance.
Discussion. Councilmember Bradford.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that I paid particular attention to and read through it, and I started trying to put together amendments to get it where I thought it would be satisfactory, presentable in a good effort to move forward. And there were about 4 or 5 amendments that would be needed, and I decided, you can't amend an item to the extent that this needs to be amended, because the amendments would need review by city legal, they would need review by the finance department for the financial impact as well. I have concerns about the 3-year versus a 5-year duration of the program. In addition to that, I'm really concerned about if you rent or lease, you're not eligible. A domicile is a domicile, and in the legal parameters, there's no distinction whether you are leasing or renting or owning to establish domicile, so there's no appropriate reason to have a disqualify if you're leasing or renting in the proviso. And the whole idea that you have to repay the money if you don't fulfill the total term, that's not appropriate either, because if you have provided that benefit, if you work for a company or do provide a benefit for 1 year and you decide to move on, you have provided that benefit, so what's the reason to have to reimburse? That didn't have meritorious reasons as well. And the other thing is we really ought to establish objective criteria to the extent that we can. To have language which indicates that the guidelines will be established, that leaves it too subjective, and many officers have said that they don't want to do that. Establish the guidelines where they are objective, and you can do that. And if we think officers are going to police in high crime areas off duty, that's not what this is about. This is simply to provide an incentive, not a reward, to live in certain areas. And I'm going to push again for zip code as opposed to high crime tracts. The officers and their families, they don't want to live like I don't either. Who wants to live in a high crime area? No one. No one. And that's not what this is about. This is an incentive to get some of the officers who reside outside the city to stay inside the city. And some of the young officers who maybe come on the department to think more about Houston as opposed to going outside. I understand there must be some process to keep officers from clustering too tightly in an area, but at the same time, you can leave the zip code. And the last thing, and the fatal flaw for me on this thing was, it had subject to the availability of funding. So who's going to relocate with a clear proviso in there indicated that you could do it for 6 months or a year, and the city said, we don't have the money anymore. I don't think we should do that. So what I'm going to do at this point in time is try to, well, do 2 things. I would make a request that there be a discussion, to the police department, to the police chief and the command staff, and to the HPOU And let's sit down and talk about this, you know, as opposed to saying that it's binding and it's not changeable, because we have to wake up one day and say, you know what, citizens want substantive input into police operations, and some things that's possible in some cases, in others it's not. But this is one where the citizens is push this. A couple of citizens came to me about 2 years ago and said, see what you can do to get this going. And I started aggressively about a year ago pushing this, trying to get it off the ground. And thanks to those who did get it into the meeting confer process, but what's offered isn't it. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to refer it back to the administration. So it can be reworked. So moved.
Then moved and seconded that the item be referred back, so discussion should be about the motion to refer back to the administration. Councilmember Stardig.
I'd like to reserve comments about the item, so.
There's a motion, the motion before us is to refer back. Councilmember Kumar? No.
I will speak concerning the main item if it's possible.
Sir, Councilmember, point of order to Councilmember Lasky.
Yes, ma'am, just as a matter of process, the item before us is the motion to refer back.
Correct.
So if we vote on the motion to refer back, is there a main item for
No, sir.
their two questions to be addressed?
No, sir.
So that's the reason I did the point of order. Wouldn't it be appropriate for them to allow their two questions to be addressed now?
I think they're absolutely, if I may respond to the point of order without being interrupted. Absolutely, sir, although what I thought I heard her say was that she had, if it was going to be proceeding forward, she wanted to, if I misunderstood her, then.
I thought I heard a reservation of questions that wanted to be asked, and I was afraid that if we voted on the motion to refer back to administration, then the item would go away, and therefore there would be no opportunity for questions. And I yield. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown.
I'm more than willing to withdraw my motion temporarily to refer back to allow discussion on this item.
Thank you, Councilman.
So back to Councilmember Stardig, you had a.
I just wanted to express my concerns as well, that I probably would be supporting the referral back to the administration. I wanted to highlight the fact that we've discussed in our committee, Mayor Pro Tem, on a number of occasions about retention. And while I understand my colleagues, Councilmember Bradford's concerns about lease versus purchase, I think that once someone purchases in the city, and they're more likely to stay. And retention is one of the issues, and I think that's where the value of our taxpayer dollars come in, is when you have retention and less turnover. When we've trained them, the cadets right out of the academy, they turn around and they leave us to go to other better paying jobs. Well, that's one of the incentives here. Is the reason for the incentive is to retain them. So I believe that the homeownership is a big piece of this. I also believe that we should be capturing right out of the cadet classes and making sure that that mindset of that culture is that they want to be Houstonians, not that they're here for a training ground and then moving on to Austin or other places. So I think it's very important that we consider all of this package. And Mayor, I'm not convinced that when we discussed all this at committee that we were heard. If we were heard, it was not incorporated at all. It was not, none of this was changed. It's come back to us just as presented, and I think there's value in retention. I know my colleagues wanted to get the officers to patrol and do all these other extra duties, which we cannot have them do, because we'd have to pay for that. The fact of the matter is, but we can incent them to live in our city where we want them to be a part of the community, as people say, the fabric of our community, so that they better understand the needs of our community. They are going to be more passionate. Their children are going to church and to school, and with the rest of the community, they're more likely to be concerned about what happened down the street with the young person that got in trouble. So I really would like to rethink this. I support my colleague's motion, if he brings it back forward, to refer back to the administration and rethink this. But I do want to also emphasize that I do not want to sacrifice any cadet classes in the process, because we need more police officers on the street. So I understand that's sort of a juggling act with the process of funding this, but I think that's another consideration we have to look at. Thank you.
Councilmember, my interpretation of Councilmember Bradford's intent was that the item before us is a referral back, but he offered to allow conversation on or discussion on the main item, but with the full expectation that this item will be referred back to the administration. Councilmember Kubash.
I'd like to thank Councilmember Lassiter for the point of order to give us the opportunity to address this matter. Thank you for withdrawing until we speak. I have been in support of what you have tried to offer to help to get our officers back into Houston, and I like the idea. I brought up the fact that perhaps since we have a revenue cap here in the city of Houston, we can give them tax incentives. I understand that the state law would have to be changed. I have contacted the union and some state reps and some senators, and I believe we're going to start pushing that for this next legislative session to be able to have the city of Houston to be able to, the council could vote to allow the officers who live in the city of Houston and who have homeownership here in Houston to give them a tax abatement on their taxes if they live in Houston, and that would be for the firemen and for the EMS. I think we need to incentivize our public servants who we call on a daily basis, sometimes on an hourly basis, to help us, especially in time of crisis. We could have a major crisis here in Houston, and we need them here and not coming in from out of town. Some live as far away as Cleveland, some I understand even live further north, San Antonio, somebody said. I'd like to see them incentivized to be here with us, and so we're going to have a state law. I'm going to be working on that, and I'd appreciate your support, and I will be supporting your motion to refer back.
I'm not aware of any police officers that live that far away, but there are actually firefighters who live out of state, which I find very problematic. Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a good public policy discussion. I think there's a merit in trying to find ways to get more police officers to live within the city limits. I think when we have approximately 20% of our police workforce that live within the city, so I think clearly we could do better. With that said, I think recruiting should be part of that discussion as well. I know they're doing a very good job, but part of the answer is to try to make sure we're aggressively recruiting here locally. Not when they're ready to enter the workforce, but out in the high schools, when they're starting to think about a career, when they're early in their college education, or prior to them getting out of military service. When I signed up for the Houston Police Department, I wanted to serve my hometown. I was born and bred a Houstonian. I lived in the city. I continue to live in the city. And so I didn't need an incentive to move back in the city because they hired a police officer back then, or a cadet back then, that was going to be Houstonian, lived in the city, and I didn't need an incentive. So we need more recruiting in our inner city schools. We need to make a bigger push, maybe put more money to that. And Mayor, I'm very supportive in light of what you said earlier, and I know the union would be supportive of this, is let's get more cadet classes instead, because we need more police officers on the street. I think that if we're going to be investing money in one or the other, the greater priority to meet would be more cadet classes. I know you have a commitment to try to do that. I would be very supportive of trying to allocate some of the monies that were going to be used for this program to cadet classes instead. So again, I welcome to see what comes of this, but it's been a good discussion, and in principle, I support these incentive programs, but if we're not in a comfortable place right now, I hope that we use it also as an opportunity to consider recruiting inside the city limits. Let's recruit homegrown Houstonians that want to live here, want to serve our city, and that don't require incentive.